For centuries, indigenous shamans of the Amazon have sung to ayahuasca, a psychoactive plant mixture believed to heal the mind, body, and spirit of those who drink it. The ayahuasqueros regard the plant as a sentient, intelligent being that connects them to the natural world and imparts ancient wisdom through ceremony. Now, people from all over the world are being called to hear the Icaros. And although each experience is unique in itself, those who hear these sacred songs see a common vision and a critical message for humanity. Open your mind and join me on a journey. Let me take you to meet ayahuasca.
The word ayahuasca comes from the Quechua language, and it means vine of the soul, or spirit vine. And in Quechua language, it refers specifically to a vine called Banisteriopsis caapi. However, it's also been brought into Spanish language and now English language in reference to a brew prepared from the Banisteriopsis caapi vine, along with other admixture plants, but most commonly a leaf from the plant Psychotria viridis. In the traditional context, it's also understood to be a plant teacher, a spirit behind, living within the vine that one can encounter by drinking the brew.
I found ayahuasca being in a place where life wasn't working out how I wanted it to be. And I had heard from a number of sources that ayahuasca was something that could help. I found it about 6 or 7 years ago. It immediately began to help me. I was using it as a tool to discard some of the things that were holding me back and get a clearer idea of my path, my life path, and what I could do to, make the most impact and enjoy my life the most.
When my most recent book on addiction was published, I began to receive a lot of inquiries about what I knew about addiction and the use of ayahuasca and the healing of addiction, and I knew nothing. Until I was almost tired of the questions. I kept thinking, I just written the book, ask me what I know about, don't ask me what I don't know about. But then I had an opportunity to participate in the ceremony. And at the very first ceremony, I understood why people were asking me. My own experience with the plant was such that I got why it would help people with any number of issues.
I've had the opportunity to drink ayahuasca a number of times, and it's one of the most remarkable things I've ever come across. It definitely changed my sense of perception of myself, my relation with others, and relation with the broader ecological sphere within which we inhabit. It's impossible to put into words, though. One of the things about the ayahuasca experience is it defies language. It's fundamentally ineffable, but it's absolutely remarkable.
As I started working with ayahuasca for myself and going on my own adventures down in South America, I was approached by some other people. Eventually, I started bringing other people down to take ayahuasca, and the results were often very positive. So that inspired me to continue. I've achieved a certain degree of clarity with this work.
I think anyone that has the mission, the passion to bring these plant medicines to other people, I think that's ultimately a good thing, because people benefit from these experiences and they become better people.
Ayahuasca works on multiple levels, physically, psychologically, emotionally, spiritually, and probably others as well. And each time you drink ayahuasca, it can be different. There's a saying that ayahuasca will teach you what you need to know.
For about 8 years, I've been working with ayahuasca as a healing modality in treatment of addictions, depression, and also in the healing of various physical ailments as well. So my work covers a broad range, all of which have to do with helping people heal. I lead a circle in which we find out why people are there, what were the historical events in their lives, and what are the emotional resonances that they carry or where they're blocked. So I'll have a certain view of them, a certain take on them, and we help them formulate an intention for the ceremony. The ceremony is led by people who are trained in the Shipibo tradition. It's in the dark. My ayahuasca colleagues, in order to work with people, have to read their energies. They do so in the dark. And they direct their chants at specific people at specific times in response to what energetic resonance they pick up on. Here's what's astonishing, and it's absolutely universal, that whatever I picked up about people when I was working with them through words, and I'm seeing their body language and I'm listening to the tone of their voice, my ayahuasca friends will pick up the same things in the dark when the client is not saying anything at all, just based on reading their energies. So they're trained that way.
In various Amazonian indigenous traditions, as well as the syncretic Brazilian churches, there's always an element of ceremony that's wrapped around the ayahuasca drinking experience.
People should not be using the plant without the proper setting. And that means under the guidance of people who've trained in the tradition.
Indigenous cultures use it predominantly as a medicine. You know, it's a medicine. It's not for the psychedelic or the visionary state. It's Westerners who have been coming down to the Amazon searching for the visions, because that's sort of the legacy of the 60s, that people wanted to see and feel, but they really didn't believe it in their minds unless they saw something. And it's like, oh, something's tangible with that. And so for me, the ayahuasca was very purgative and very healing in some of those first sessions. But essentially, as it was healing, there's something in the neurochemical composition of harmine and harmaline, which is very heart-opening, which is the active chemical constituents in the vine. Very heart-opening, and I didn't really have a huge visionary experience, which was fine. And for many years, I never had a huge visionary experience. It was what I was feeling. And what I was feeling was opening up all this empathic body. So I learned when I trained with and reported on indigenous cultures, their cosmology, they believe that there's an energetic body, there's an emotional body, there's a physical body, there's all these gradations of being, and sickness and disease comes out in your physical body as a port of last call. And so when you want to do the healing, it's not just that, say, ayahuasca is helping you heal, it does clean you out physically, and you're purging and cleansing the body, and it goes through the liver, but it's also helping bring up the subconscious mind.
I found a modality with the help of which I can get people to understand themselves and see new possibilities for themselves in a period of 7 to 8 days over 3 ceremonies, much more rapidly than I could over years of talking with them. And so I do that. And although it's only a small part of my overall work, it's also the most exciting part, because the transformations are so dramatic. Having said that, there's no panacea, and this isn't the panacea either, because the realizations now need to be applied in real life. The realizations have to be made real. They have to be integrated and incorporated. And that's, given the nature of our culture and given people's ingrained tendencies, is always a challenge. But it's an opening that happens that is otherwise hard to attain.
Well, there's really two different streams of efficacy with these plants. There's the scientific aspect and the spiritual aspect. Scientifically, they're changing brain activity patterns and forging new connections. There's research behind this, more and more research actually in the past couple of years. It seems like every week there's a new article coming out saying that mushrooms can fight depression, that psychedelics can help forge new brain connections, and ayahuasca can grow brain cells and things like that. There are some psychological advantages to doing this. People come and can re-experience past traumas or blockages that they brought in with them, and look at those in a different light, or perhaps connect with the part of themselves that has been buried by whatever negative energies or programs have been acquired through life. I mean, everybody, all of us, we collect these things, and we all have struggles and challenges and problems. By going through the medicine experience, some of those things can be rectified.
For people of relatively good mental health, and even people who are struggling with certain kinds of mental health issues, ayahuasca, like anxiety or depression or post-traumatic stress disorder or addictions, ayahuasca might be actually something really valuable for them to have an opportunity to look at the roots of some of those illnesses. Western biomedicine does a good job of masking symptoms, with our various pharmaceutical medications that can allow people to have, in some cases, perhaps better life than they would have otherwise. But often it's at the cost of, medications taken on a daily basis for months or years sometimes, without ever resolving where those illnesses may have come from.
As a Western-trained medical doctor and who was in practice for over 3 decades, I can tell you both about the miraculous achievements of Western medicine and also about its limitations. So the achievements we don't have to address, they're amazing. The limitations, however, are immense.
Ayahuasca seems to get more to exploring where some of the roots of those pathologies come from, and giving people an opportunity to explore that and process it in a way that helps resolve some of the underlying issues and lead to longer-term healing without the need to resort to pharmaceutical interventions.
The plant, ayahuasca, is not specific to any one particular human condition. It's not like it's a treatment for addiction, it's a treatment for depression or cancer or anything else. What it is a way to get to know yourself more deeply. When it comes to chronic conditions of mind and body, Western medicine is largely helpless. We can mitigate, alleviate symptoms, but that's about all we can do. We don't know how to help people heal. The traditional medicinal practices, not just in the Amazon basin, but in North America and elsewhere, are actually better at evoking people's inner healing capacities. So they provide something that Western medicine doesn't.
There's also an aspect of spirituality to the medicine, where people can connect with something bigger than themselves.
I don't think you can have these experiences with ayahuasca, or also even study these systems without having a spiritual aspect to it. Because when you take ayahuasca in nature and you have this sort of mystical revelation about our relationship with nature and about nature, there's certain sort of responses that result for that. One of them is a biophilia, which is love for life. We have an inherent affection for living things. And then there's a feeling that everything is intelligent, the term is animism, actually. And indigenous people generally have an animistic outlook on life. In their worldview, everything is intelligent. Plants, animals, people, rocks, weather, they're all an expression of an inherent intelligence built into nature. So you can call that animism, and then pantheism is the other umbrella term for the feeling that, yes, nature is divine, there is a divine, it's not separate from nature. It is nature. You know, God is built into nature, if you want to put it that way. God didn't, some outside entity didn't come along and create the universe. The universe is it waking up to itself. God is inherent in the structure of the cosmos. So that's a spiritual outlook. And interestingly enough, it's the indigenous outlook. And it's the psychedelic worldview as well. They put an individual in direct contact with something transcendent, something divine, if you will. This is the result of empirical observation. You know, this is not like what we believe, it's that this is what we experience. It's obvious, and it's actually closer to an accurate scientific understanding now, which has taken a long time to evolve, because for a long time science has been trying to deny spirit, but now they're being forced to acknowledge that spirit exists, particularly in where psychedelics is concerned. They have to acknowledge that there is a spiritual aspect to healing. That's what these things are. They are medicines for the spirit, for the soul.
In indigenous mythology, plant medicines like ayahuasca have been associated with origins of language, culture, and humanity itself. It is said that humankind is a creation of the cosmos, and the sacred spirit vine is a gift to keep us connected to the cosmic and solar creative energies of the universe. In the ayahuasca ceremony, it is believed that shamans connect to these universal energies by singing to the plants, acting as conduits that impart ancient knowledge, wisdom, and healing power accessed through the medicine. It is also believed that those who drink ayahuasca meet the plant spirit herself and learn to see the interconnected realities of nature, the universe, and all living things.
So my first experience with ayahuasca, the real beauty and the difference that I felt and that I wrote about is there's a relationship with ayahuasca and with the entheogens themselves. They're not just chemicals from a lab that you can give the same person body weight, the same substance. These are things which really scan you, they go into you, they heal physically, but they're forming a relationship. It's like, knock, knock, are you going to let me in? How much can you surrender? How much can you let go of your frail human anxiousness, that this ego that thinks it's in control? How much can you open? What can I show you? Where do you want to go? And over time, working with the medicine, when you're cleansed and you've done the dietas and it's not having to affect you physically, then, you know, what they say is it works up the chakras and you have activation of different energy centers going all the way to the crown, and you're going into different bardo states and interdimensional journey work, and you're seeing the vast beauty and intelligence, you know, of nature extends beyond the physical world into the astral realms, into the higher dimensional states, which quantum physicists say there's potentially, Michio Kaku, famous physicist, says 12 hyperdimensions, you know, where really, it seems like indigenous cultures, they call it the science of curanderismo, like this isn't just hocus pocus in the jungle. This is a real art form and a real science that people, the curanderos, the shamans, know how to heal, and they also know how to traverse between the worlds on behalf of their patients. And when we stay with the ayahuasca in the container of the ceremony and of the lineage, it's very different from a recreational drug experience. It's medicine.
Baby,
They look upon it as a living being. So when they say medicine, they mean there's a spirit in this substance because it's from the earth. And when you drink this substance, the spirit is in you, and then you have a relationship with it.
It was through my academic study. I was reading books. I remember reading Terence McKenna's Food of the Gods and Wade Davis's One River around the same time, and I remember coming across ayahuasca, which I'd heard of prior to that, and the idea that it was a plant teacher. And I was a teacher myself at the time and was struck by that metaphor, or maybe it's not a metaphor, that the idea that plants could be teachers, and was sort of impelled to pursue that idea.
I think they're learning tools, basically. I think the indigenous people have the concept that ayahuasca and these other sacred plants, but if you want to think of them that way, but they have the idea that they're teachers. They talk about plantus que enseñan, plants that teach. I think that's very apt. I think that's exactly what they do.
There's a lot of academic momentum towards multi-species approaches, which are engaging with agencies other than human. For my own research, that kind of comes to play with my own relationship with plants and with plant beings. I'm looking at the connections between the Amazon and Northern California, and how knowledge, rituals, plants are traveling in networks between the two places. And then looking at also indigenous scholars who are talking about the importance of multi-species perspectives and other ways of knowing and other ways of understanding the world. It's working with the plants to create some sort of knowledge that I wouldn't have access to otherwise. We've been seeing for a while these plants coming out of the Amazon. What is the role of the plant in that whole process of becoming more mobilized, becoming more globalized, and why at this time has it emerged?
I've actually had ayahuasqueros tell me from Peru that they perceive that the medicine is traveling north because the north needs the help.
Now, why is ayahuasca suddenly perseverating across the planet practically faster than you can grow it? Well, this is my theory is ayahuasca was fine seeing the way people treated each other as long as they killed each other. But when they started killing plants, ayahuasca said this is not correct. And the peculiarity of the teacher plants, and we know there are more than one, but ayahuasca is the one we know best, tobacco certainly is another, and so forth. But these are plants who have been given the job of dealing with us. And I bet that they didn't ask for it. You know, I have this imaginary Congress of the plants and says someone's going to have to talk to humans. Who's going to do it? I'm not going to do it. I'm not going to do it. I don't want to touch it.
One of the phenomena of drinking ayahuasca is often a sense of agency, that there is a sentience behind the plant.
There's a presence there. There's a sense of engaging with something.
Well, I think we're at a very critical sort of juncture in the evolution of consciousness and the evolution of life, and in the current state of the planet.
I'm sure the plants have a lot of messages, and I think that it's a message that they've probably been trying to tell us all along, and maybe now we're more receptive to hearing certain messages, or maybe now it's more pressing.
I think the plants do have intelligence. I think that that's how they, these molecules that they make, and they make a vast array of molecules, and a famous botanist has said, and I have said, repeating him many times, plants substitute biosynthesis for behavior. They make all these secondary compounds because they don't react to their environment through behavior, through fight or flight or that sort of thing. Their response is through chemistry, because they're stuck in one place. And they make a vast array of chemicals because they have figured out photosynthesis. And among those chemicals, some of them happen to be neurotransmitter-like. In fact, they are neurotransmitters, and so they fit into the same receptors that our brain neurotransmitters fit into. So, and even our brains, the neurotransmitters in our brains are an evolutionary reflection of plant chemical compounds. So I do think that plants have a certain intelligence. It's not like our intelligence, but they're very much involved in signal transduction processes, which is a fancy way of saying information exchange mediated chemically. So it's a little different. We're not doing signal transduction in that strict sense right now. We're just talking to each other. But if I were emitting chemicals that your brain was picking up, then that would be signal transduction in the way that biochemists talk about it. That's what plants do to each other, to other organisms on the ecosystem level. And I do think that ayahuasca, is one of these plant teachers.
There's living creatures, living entities that are vibrational essences, like souls, in these plants, in these medicines, in this planet. And you just think of it in the West as, landscape to be demolished and put a car park down. It's a disconnect which has created largely responsible for the planetary emergency and our ecological crisis. So that's why there's that urgency for the medicine of ayahuasca to come out into the West, because we're the ones pushing this cultural agenda, destroying the planet.
I think that ayahuasca and all the other medicine combinations that go with ayahuasca are one of so many healing plants of the Amazon and the world. Every single part of the rainforest is alive, and we have to respect every part, from the smallest ant to the biggest kapok tree and everything in between, and even what we cannot see, because all of it has value. People are disconnected from nature. The Amazon is at a crucial tipping point. It may already be at the tipping point to be able to continue functioning as an ecological system. That's the most biologically diverse place on the planet. It's also the homeland to numerous indigenous nationalities and peoples. That big green splotch on the world map that is the Amazon rainforest is the world's largest tropical rainforest. It's the world's largest carbon sink. And the majority of the green that you see in the Amazon are indigenous peoples' territories. But those are very, very threatened right now. They're threatened by oil and gas development. They're threatened by deforestation, both legal and illegal logging, by agribusiness, by mega dams and infrastructure projects, mining, roads, and also by the criminalization of indigenous people, by the threats by the government, by the corporations to indigenous peoples who are defending their territories. To protect the Amazon, you really have to empower and support and amplify the voices of indigenous people who are the best stewards of the Amazon. Indigenous people are 4% of the global population, but they're protecting 80% of the world's biodiversity. And we're doing this for our children, and we're doing this for our forests, but we're also doing it for our global climate.
What's lacking is actually an openness to looking at the evidence. So never mind that we have an arrogance about traditional cultures and we dismiss their teachings as primitive or inferior to ours. We don't even look at our own science.
Euro-American cultures came in hundreds of years ago and still today, denigrating these cultural practices, denying that the language, the beliefs, the customs of indigenous people had any benefits or value, and imposing our cultural narratives on them as the sole force of civilization. Perhaps we should flip it on its head and ask respectfully for indigenous peoples to share with us what they know and might be of real value to all of us in a way that currently, I think some people are starting to see that. And ayahuasca is not the only force that can help with these realizations, but it's certainly a very powerful one.
Many people who take ayahuasca come away with this sort of renewed understanding of their relationship with nature and sort of a commitment to helping to nurture nature. That's exactly the message that these plant teachers wish to convey. A few things. Number one, recognize that you're part of nature. You don't dominate it, you don't own it, it doesn't exist for you to exploit. You are not separate from nature. This goes against 2,000 years or more of, the Western prejudice, the Western notion that nature exists for us to exploit. No, we are controlled by nature, not the other way.
Ayahuasca has an agenda. And that's an agenda which is to stop destroying the planet. It's a very strong ecological message. Regardless of what else you're getting out of an ayahuasca experience, you're going to come away feeling that you would like the natural world not to be destroyed.
We have put so much pressure on the equilibrium systems, the homeostatic systems that keep the planet in equilibrium. Now, these systems are incredibly resilient, but if you keep pushing and never let up, you can reach a tipping point where then they cannot recover. And I think the ecosystem as a whole, Gaia, if you like that concept, and I do, I think it's a very apt way to think of it, the planet's intelligence, the entire community of species is intelligent. They recognize that they're under threat. The cause of the threat is clearly these 7.5 billion monkeys that are crawling all over the place, laboring under delusions that nature has no value.
One, I think we need to have respect and value for the healing plants. Ethnobotany has taught us that plants, we don't even know half of what we could know. The shamans do. They know and they're willing to share, but we have to be respectful. One, people connected to the plants, yes. Two, I think people need to connect with nature. Wherever, it could be the Amazon, it could be open spaces here in urban areas. It could be national parks, protected areas, a connection to nature. Any kind of nature, I think, is important for our times right now.
People can connect with something bigger than themselves, can connect with the soul of nature. Nature's alive. There's a brain behind the whole thing, all the animals and the plants all working together and each one serving a function. And I think it's important with such an urbanized and increasingly urbanizing society that people don't lose that connection.
We'd have much less sense of an impending ecological catastrophe if we could shift our thinking to one of more sustainability, one of more social and economic justice. Whether that could happen in a generation, perhaps not, but I think we're rapidly running out of time to make some really serious shifts at a global level to look at how things like global warming, plastic in the oceans, deforestation, desertification, and growing amounts of debt. How are we going to deal with these things in the future? It seems doing more of the same is not likely to get us to where we need to go. I think we're desperately needing to look at something different, and it might be that ayahuasca is that kind of something different.
We're now undergoing the 6th great species extinction on the planet. It does happen regularly in larger geological tracts of time, and the biomass of the species die off. But we have survived before, but there's a cull, But also what nature does with the plants and with the things, she gets the species to cooperate. So Charles Darwin, the origins of species and the competition model, which wasn't all that he was saying, but there's different levels of interspecies symbiosis and cooperation, like when bees get the pollen from the plants and spread the pollen. Nature utilizes that strategy to get her species, which are all actually extensions of her, of source in matter, to utilize and to circulate energy around. Like it's a whole system theory. You know, James Lovelock coined this the Gaia hypothesis in the 70s.
So there's, I think, some of the insights that people talk about having from ayahuasca is a sense of planetary consciousness, encounter with Gaia, the metaphor of the earth spirit, that we're floating on this little blue planet and perhaps need to be taking better care of it.
I don't want to live in a world without rainforests, and I just feel responsibility to apply myself to making the world a better place. It's really that simple. I'm very concerned about humans destroying this planet. It's not something I want to see happen. And when I see the potential that we have, that I'm learning about, it's giving me a way to apply all of that energy and concern that I've had for a really long time. So all those ceremonies where I see the world from a bird's eye view and I see humans eating into the forests, and it deeply concerns me. But we have the ability to turn things around.
We have to honor and respect nature. And if we honor and respect nature, our own inner psychology will be healthier.
It's like we're this compartmentalized vegetable that has lost the extrasensory capacity to realize we are nature, and the plant medicines are us as well. Like everything is in unity conscious and everything is one in the play of forms, but we now see plants as separate from us because we don't see ourselves as the planet. We've forgotten the plan, we've lost the plot.
I'm told, and I've read, and I believe, intuit, that there's a unitary way of looking at things, where you just see all of reality as one. And that, of course, scientifically makes total sense, because it is all one. I mean, you and I are nothing but molecules and a certain set of substances organized in a certain form, very temporarily. Other than that, we're just part of the whole thing. And if somebody just read energies, if there was some device out there that picked up purely energies, we would just be fluctuating and mobile agglomerations of energy that have come together for a while, go through a period of growth, go through another period of shrinkage, and then just dissolve back into the whole thing again. So it is all one.
By drinking ayahuasca, we can often appreciate how we're not that different from ants or fish or other types of creatures that we seem to think that we're so different from. We're all DNA-based life forms. I think back to Jeremy Narby's book, The Cosmic Serpent, and the insights about how DNA-based life forms are all one. We're all coming from the same molecular structures, and that our insights about that, don't have to just come from science, but can come directly from experiences with plants like ayahuasca, and that the indigenous peoples of the Amazon were not mistaken in knowing that they had something of extreme value and importance.
I think that ayahuasca is trying to catalyze consciousness change on a global scale as a mechanism to avert the disaster that we're facing. Before we can begin to address it, we have to wake up. The plant teachers are saying, wake up. I think that part of the ayahuasca tourism phenomena, ayahuasca has become a global phenomenon. Partly because I think it's an ambassador from the Gaian mind, if you want to put it that way. The community of species on the planet is trying to get us to wake up and realize the damage that we're doing.
Well, ayahuasca can help people wake up. It can certainly help people wake up by opening the third eye, or simply by putting them in touch with realities that they had repressed, or putting them in touch with an aspect of themselves that they lost contact with. It can help people wake up.
We don't have a lot of time left, and this is the only, I feel, the last best hope to avert these accelerating environmental disasters that are going to overtake us very soon.
This is the planet that has created psilocybin mushrooms and ayahuasca and 5-MeO-DMT, and these things slot into our neural brain structure because they're meant to. We have a cannabinoid system which is so ancient, that it has a relationship with cannabis which goes back hundreds of thousands of years. We're meant to plug back into nature through these plants, and when we do, it pulls back the curtain and it opens up the vast ecology beyond the physical world, and we feel nature again. And on some level, it seems to be she may be working to transmit information across species lines through the entheogens and to connect us to the larger majesty of what she really is.
There is so much about the values of Western civilization that are questionable to me, that seem to be in denial of life in a certain way.
We live in a materialistic society, which means that we don't like to look at the larger picture. And the same thing is true in medicine. So there's just a resistance. And of course, if, for example, physicians or lawyers and judges or policymakers or educators understood the implications of this biopsychosocial view, a whole lot of things would have to change. How we practice medicine would have to radically change. How we educated kids would have to radically change. What kind of parenting advice we would give to young mothers and fathers would have to change. What kind of social policies we would enact and pursue would have to change. And there's tremendous conservatism and resistance to change. So whether this perspective is accepted has not to do with its merits, it has to do with the challenge that it poses to the way things are.
The medicines are for when you're sick. We have been sick as a planetary culture. A lot of us still are. The medicines are there to cleanse us, to help heal us, and then to reveal that we are our own medicine. And the next step is to plug back in ourselves as a global culture.
I mean, there's every reason to question the health of this culture. So as this breakdown becomes more apparent, there's also naturally more of a desire to find out what's going on and to look for alternative ways of understanding ourselves.
If people are skeptical, I would challenge them to keep an open mind, to reflect on the possibility that they may not be as fully informed as they might, just as, again, the church fathers hundreds of years ago weren't as fully informed about the cosmos because they refused to look through telescopes and see that there were actually empirical ways of knowing, experiences that they could have that would shift their perspective from a geocentric model of the universe to a heliocentric model of the universe, and that kind of paradigm shift is perhaps what we need today.
Remember, we used to think the Earth was the center of the universe. And then we got that the sun was the center of the universe. Then we got the sun as like, a fifth-rate star in a third-rate galaxy in some little corner of space. So the universe isn't begun to show us what is going on.
I would love to see less arrogance on our part as kind of northerners and westerners about how great we are and how great our science is, and more humility about understanding what we don't understand. Accepting that there's a lot of things we don't understand that our particular perspective just doesn't encompass or can account for. So I've learned a lot from my limited exposure to traditional medicinal practices.
They're more than therapeutic, right? I mean, they have that, and that's important. They're also tools for understanding the mind and consciousness. You know, I think that is important, and I also think that they're tools for understanding the world. In a sense, they're scientific instruments through which you can look at the world in a way that you've never looked at before. And if you happen to be a natural philosopher or someone studying nature, it can be as important as a telescope or a microscope. It's an instrument.
I think it's helpful to think of ayahuasca as a kind of cognitive tool that can literally shape our neural architecture. But it's not just the plant itself. Again, it's the cultural system in which it's embedded that allows us to benefit from the kinds of insights that indigenous people have discovered. It can help to realize, both in terms of healing and in terms of learning. And so I think our modern systems of education could very much benefit from exploring ideas around other ways of learning, other ways of knowing, that perhaps not all knowledge that is valuable is based in letters and numbers. That perhaps there's other kinds of tools that we can use that extend the limits of human perception.
We have certain experiences that give us a certain point of view. And like the Buddha said, with our thoughts we create the world. It's our thoughts that create the world that we live in. But what kind of thoughts? Those thoughts are based on a certain kind of experience.
This work is about cleaning yourself out, expanding consciousness, and becoming a better person. Really, all those things put together can really open a person up to a whole new way of living.
I'm seeing both a tremendous crisis and a situation where things are actually getting worse. But that is also inducing or triggering tremendous curiosity and interest, and people wanting new ways of understanding their experience. Things are not working, which also means more people are waking up.
The vast problems faced by humanity are systematically interconnected and interdependent. Through a deeper ecological perspective accessed by communicating with the plant teachers, we begin to see ourselves as a single strand in a vastly complex web of life. One does not need to drink ayahuasca to see this unified vision of the cosmos and understand the universal connectedness of all living things. In fact, we need look no further than the forefront of contemporary science. But for those who the plants call, for those who are pulled to explore the unknown, for those who long to hear the Icaros, then come and meet the plant teacher.